Hi, I'm Dan Costa, editor-in-chief of PCMag.com, and welcome to Fast Forward, part of an ongoing conversation about living in the future. We're going to change things up a little bit this week, and you're going to find that I actually answer more questions than I ask. I want to share a conversation I had last week with GoKart Labs' Dole. We talked about the future of the digital home, the latest Apple news, and all sorts of other cool things. I really hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
Dan's actually, I've been following Dan for a really long time. He doesn't know it. Been following him on Twitter.
I was wondering who that was behind me.
Not in like a creepy way.
All those years.
Yeah, not in like a creepy way, but it's I get to interview you. So thank you very much for being here. And it's great to be back in DC. A lot of familiar faces and friends and colleagues. We're going to jump right into it because I think we're probably the only thing standing in the way of the bar.
Yeah, we're batting cleanup.
Yes. So I'm going to just dive right in because I was following you on Twitter. I saw earlier this week you were out in the Bay Area following and reporting on Apple's WWDC launch event where there was a number of things announced. And selfishly, I've got a couple of questions for you about what did get announced and what some of the implications are. And I think as I start thinking about, as a technologist myself, and as somebody who is probably as steeped in technology as anyone could be, it feels like the responsibility and the implications right now on technology is steeper and steeper. And we have a responsibility to do right by the needs that we're serving with this technology. And so some of the things that got announced have some really interesting, positive, and potentially scary implications. The first being the competitor to Amazon's Alexa, the HomePod. This was deemed as the potentially something that was trying to compete with Alexa. We all know Siri exists probably in everybody's pocket here, but we don't use it very often. So what's going on with HomePod? And curious what you think the implications are of artificial intelligence in the home now coming from Apple.
Yeah, it was an interesting. First, I should probably admit that I made a $5 bet that they would announce the HomePod or some kind of speaker at that event, and I won that bet. So I'm coming out ahead. I was very vested, and we got to the end of the event. I'm like, there's only one more thing. It's got to be that. I need this $5. So it was enormously satisfying for me. I almost jumped up and down right there in the crowd to win that. But I mean, they had to do this. They had to come out with this. They had to make this announcement. And it's important to know that they have this device. They announced it. I saw it in the demo room, but it's not going to be on sale until December. So the reason they announced it is because they need to get developers on board to start building around this platform and signal that they are going to have a digital home presence in the living room, in the kitchen, on your kitchen counter, and they want developers to start building solutions for that. So they've got a device. It's funny, they would not say it was an Echo competitor. When they described it, they almost wanted to compete with Bose. They're like, oh, we're an audio company, and this is just an extension of Beats, and we're going to focus on this amazing audio quality. It's going to map the room that you put it into, and it's going to sound amazing. Of course, no one's heard what it really sounds like, and no one will hear what it sounds like until December. So maybe it's got amazing audio quality. The thing that makes it unique, and they almost threw it in at the end, is the Siri microphones. And they were like, oh, we basically built in features that we think would be useful in the living room. And you look down those features, it's everything Siri does. Like, they built those features a year ago for the phone. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But they're catching up to Google Home. They're catching up to the Amazon Echo, and I think it's really exciting. I mean, it's good to have competition. What it does is validate the space. Apple doesn't get into spaces and into new markets until there's already a market, until there's already money to be made, and then they catch up fast. And then they leverage their platform, and they wind up using that leverage to establish a market-leading position. And I think they're probably going to do about the same thing here. So I can't wait to see it. But the thing that I have to remind people is that, yeah, it looks really cool, but it doesn't ship till December, and there's going to be a new version of Google Home by then. There's going to be a new version, maybe multiple new versions of Amazon Alexa, and Alexa has tens of thousands of apps, and people are used to it. It already has an install base. People have more than one in their home. Apple's got catching up to do.
So Siri's been out for a while now on everybody's phone. Why did Siri not get the adoption that Alexa has gotten? And it almost feels like when you walk into somebody's home, it's like, this not even gimmicky thing because it's actually really useful, but everyone surrounds themselves, surrounds around it and has fun with it. That doesn't happen with Siri. Why? I mean, what happened there?
Location. It really has to do with the location. And when we first reviewed the Amazon Alexa, the Amazon Echo, we gave it a so-so review, because it was an okay speaker, but it was overpriced. And the audio quality, which is what my guy evaluated it on, was like, for $250, you get a better speaker. And we didn't give it a glowing review. And it also didn't have a lot of skills and wasn't that smart at that point. But it got better. It learned. There started to become more and more apps available. And we started to understand that this was not a speaker for playing music, or it was that, but it was much more than that. It was also for setting timers. It was also for getting directions and getting the weather. And then I bought one, and I put it on my kitchen counter, and I use it every day. And I use it when I'm cooking, and I just set timers left and right. That stops me from having to go over to my microwave, type in the timer, walk away, forget about it, timer goes off, got to walk back over, turn it off. All of that's voice activated right now. It seems like a small thing, but it's an important thing.
Is real.
It's a first world problem, but it's a problem. That interface, that voice interface that works just as well on the iPhone, it's not something, you don't use it walking down the street, but sitting in your kitchen and changing the music and playing a different radio station or asking what band is playing is something that it's the right interface for the right location. And that's something that a lot of technology companies, like they had the technology, they built the technology, they released the technology. They didn't think about where it was being used, and that made all the difference.
Well, and I think like when you talk about the interface, going voice first compared to, with Siri having a screen right there that you can just as easily, look things up and use the touch interface. But having voice only really, I think, personified it in a way that was almost cute at first, but then useful, and then became a member of the family for a lot of people. That when you have, touch interface, it doesn't give you that personal feedback in a weird way. It actually worked.
And it was all about the constraint. So the thing is that Siri works pretty good, pretty well. The problem is typing in your commands is more accurate and faster. So the keyboard was just faster. The touchscreen was faster and more effective than the voice command. So people didn't use the voice command. When you don't have that and all you have is voice, you use it differently, and you use it in a different context. And so the technology, it's the same technology. But they found the right place to use it, and they took a chance on it.
Well, I'm glad you won the bet on that one.
I haven't gotten the cash yet, but I will as soon as I go back to the office.
Interest. The other announcement that piqued my interest that I really wanted to get your thoughts on was ARKit. So when that got announced earlier in the week, it was touted as the first iOS was going to be the first mass adopted AR platform, artificial
reality. Augmented reality.
Augmented reality, yes. Platform, because now iOS is on pretty much everybody's devices. So the demo that they did, if you didn't see it, was a video game style demo. And they referenced Pokemon Go being more realistic. And I instantly became a little sad because I was like, so the first mass adoption AR platform is going to make Pokemon Go more realistic. Is that really what the world needs? And I'm hoping that there's something bigger there. What are the implications of this AR platform that people can start building to?
Yeah, there's sort of a surreal nature to an Apple launch, because I'm sitting in the room with 6,000 developers. We're watching them launch these platforms that are going to shape our lives over the next 10 years. And there are tons and tons of innovations. And you get these executives up there who are the smartest and brightest and best paid leaders in the tech space. And they're getting so excited about stickers. And they're like, oh, and look at the camera. You're going to be able to take better pictures of your dog. And then they do the AR demo, and they show Pokemon Go, which was a game that was amazing 12 months ago, and no one plays anymore, in the US anyway. There were some people playing Pokemon Go in line to get into the Apple event. But that application, I think, was very disappointing. But AR itself, I think, has incredible opportunities. I was just thinking, in terms of AR opportunities, just that idea of layering in that augmented interface and that virtual world over your existing world. I think it was in Richmond, and I was walking around Richmond, and I saw these like QR codes on the street, and I would scan them, and it would tell you about the prices of local real estate. So they were basically listings for local rentals in the region. I was like, wow, that's pretty great. I don't know, 7 years ago, and I hadn't seen AR codes used in that way. You could do that same application now with augmented reality, where you walk around a neighborhood, you open up the app, it maps the price and location of all the apartments that are available for rent within the area, and you just stand on a street corner, hold your phone up, and turn around and see where you want to live, and see what all the different prices are. That's technology that exists today. And ARKit's going to be the thing that is going to allow those types of technologies and those types of apps to be built across platforms. I don't think there's anything unique about the iOS version of it. You're going to be able to do the same thing on Android. But having that platform and having lots of different application providers have access to it, it's an enabling technology.
I personally got really excited just thinking about the healthcare implications when you could put somebody in an immersive environment for training, medical training, and other things that would otherwise be, really high cost to develop and to build training modules around. That was kind of instantly where I went to, and then obviously the educational components. I think there's going to be a lot of developers out there that are going to hopefully use it for good and tackle some of the tough problems. And selfishly, I want to see this happen in healthcare and education. Yeah,
Microsoft is actually, if I look at the players in the market, Google's there, Apple just jumped in. Microsoft's been here for years. They had HoloLens, which they announced a couple of years ago. They've sort of renamed it Mixed Reality, but it's basically the same thing. And the demos that I've done, it's been the best AR experience I've had. And the best experiences have been the ones that help you do things and help you navigate the world around you. One of the first demos I did was rewiring a light switch. And the wires were all there, and you could have somebody Skype in and explain to you like what wires you should connect to what other wires. And if you start to do the wrong thing, they could say, no, not that one, and they could annotate the space and the field in front of you. That type of demo and that type of experience is going to scale. It's going to be everything from repairing aircraft engines to doing surgery. And getting a second opinion in real time in the middle of an operation where a doctor across the world can look at the operation field and say, look, this is what you're missing, and this is how to solve it.
That's amazing. Yeah. What was the story that didn't get reported on that you were excited about?
There's a ton. So you're in the room and you're trying to follow what's going on. You're taking notes and you're live blogging, and they're announcing feature after feature for iOS and macOS. And the thing that struck me that we haven't really dug into enough is their payments plan. They're going to be able to move. They announced that iMessage is going to be able to exchange money, just between you and a vendor, but also person to person. So basically having Venmo built into iMessage. And then as you exchange money, before it changes hands, before you redeposit it into your bank account, it's going to sit in your Apple account as basically a gift card. And Apple's going to be able to collect interest on that money while it sits there. They'll have the float on. And when you think about the install base that Apple has, it's huge. And every tech company is trying to figure this out. And there are very few in the US that have done a good job of it. Venmo does a great job, but they got acquired by PayPal. And I think they lost a little bit of that hunger and a little bit of that edge, and they certainly lost velocity and momentum. I had to tell my 22-year-old to download Venmo so I could send him money. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. That means your platform is on the decline when I'm the one pointing it out to a 22-year-old. But the fundamental technology is there, and if you look at what WeChat is doing in China right now, where you have one social media and messaging platform that does transactions, it does commerce, that's where all these vendors want to go. And Apple enabling that now, Facebook has its own version of it, but I just find that hugely disruptive to all sorts of industries. And this is going to be a way that people transact. People are going to buy things through Messenger. They're going to buy things through iMessage, and Apple's going to be there right at the center of it.
So switching gears a little bit to something maybe a little less shiny and exciting, but Silicon Valley and other tech hubs, I'll use Silicon Valley as kind of the representative just example here, but they get a lot of criticism for solving problems that don't actually need to be solved. Just recently, I don't know how many people followed, but like the $800 juice machine that did the same thing. It's just if you Juicero. If you just squeeze it yourself, you could squeeze a fresh glass of juice without the $800 machine. There's plenty of other examples that we could pick on. But what do you think about that criticism? Is it the right criticism? Is there a point to it? And what do we do about it if you're a smart entrepreneur or large company that's trying to be innovative in this space? to solve problems that really matter.
Yeah. I mean, I think Juicero is a great example, and I actually use it in one of my slide decks about, I shouldn't say, I guess I can say the Internet of shit. Because we talk about the Internet of Things, and we look at all these devices that come to the market, and we get a lot of them in our lab, and we test them. And I mean, we'll basically test anything with a Wi-Fi connection. So, and we do. And the vast majority of these things are not good. And not good is an understatement. They barely work. Like, they literally have a Wi-Fi connection because they're so cheap to add a Wi-Fi connection to a coffee maker or to a juice machine. And if you look at why is the Juicero connected, the only reason it's connected is to enforce DRM, to prevent you from buying other juice packets and using them with the machine. Like, it's not an advantage in any way. And then the exploration of how you could just get around it by squeezing out the packets was really, really revealing. So there's a lot of junk out there, which I think is great because PCMag gets to test it and tell people what works and what doesn't. But at the same time, there are really important problems that are being worked on. I mean, we talk about self-driving cars and all the companies that are working to develop those technologies. That is a huge and real problem, and it's going to happen. We're going to have self-driving cars, and as a result of it, we're going to have 37,000 less car accidents on the roads in the United States. That the lives are going to be saved by this technology. Now, there's a downside to it as well, but I mean, there are lots of big problems that technology companies are addressing head-on, and I'm excited about all those opportunities.
So, when we look at examples of startups that have completely upended entire industries. We have Uber and Lyft and Airbnb. I mean, the incumbents didn't stand a chance. 10 years ago, Marriott wasn't sitting there thinking about how they were going to do place sharing with their properties, probably outside of having timeshares, which served a certain market. What's unique about the large companies out there like Amazon, like Microsoft, or IBM, that are behemoths, that are actually staying on the forefront of their industry and using the pressure from these startups to continue to innovate? What's different about them? What are they doing differently? And what could we learn from what they're doing so that others that are maybe struggling a little bit more, so that they don't get upended by startups, what can we learn there?
Yeah, I think and it's come up a couple of times tonight about the challenges of innovating in a big company, and I would actually refine it a little bit. And it's very hard to innovate when you already have a stable revenue stream. You have a stable revenue stream. You've got money coming in. Your business, you have a tendency to double down on that and to make sure and to protect it and to do whatever you need to do to protect it, including hire K Street lobbyists in order to make sure there are regulations to protect your industry. All of that is like a very natural evolutionary path. And but when you look at companies that innovate, they don't have that. They, as Eric Ries says, he talks about the definitions of what makes a startup, and one of those components is a condition of extreme uncertainty. You have to have extreme uncertainty, and there's not a lot of uncertainty at IBM or at Amazon. It's hard to maintain that, and those are still relatively young companies. I mean, IBM's been around for a while, but Amazon's got a little bit shorter history. But that condition of uncertainty is what really drives you forward. And there are ways that big companies can create that uncertainty and create that capacity for risk-taking in smaller departments and on a departmental level. But it's a real challenge. It's a challenge in my business in media. Like, there are things that work. How do you innovate and build the next thing while you're still making money on the old thing? It's a serious challenge, but I mean, that's part of what GoKart does, right? Like, you come in and you help people see these lines and draw these boundaries and establish where the adjacent possible is.
Yep, and quickly test to see which ones are actually valid. My last question for you before we open it up to the audience is, I'm getting the hook, but what is the one announcement or tech product that you're excited for it to come out in the coming year that you can publicly talk about at this point, that you're just most excited about personally?
Yeah, well, the NDAs that I get generally are only for a week or two out, which is interesting because a lot of the tech companies, the products that are going to come out in the next year or two, companies don't talk about, and I don't think they know what they're going to be. They're still, when they say they're in development, they are in development. There's a reason no journalist got his hands on the HomePod. We could see it, we could take pictures of it. It wasn't operational. You couldn't ask it questions because it's not done. Like, that is absolutely not done. That said, I think that that device, whether it's the HomePod or the next version of the Alexa, the thing that's interesting about the HomePod, it's got an A8 processor. It's got enough processing power to really be that digital home hub. And Apple's got enough of an application developer community to fill out all those applications and really connect with all of your devices. If they can make that work, and Google's trying to do the exact same thing and is on very equal footing, that's the thing that excites me, is that I don't want to have 10 different apps to control 10 different devices in my home. I want one system to control my lights, to control my TV, to control my temperature. And that's the thing that we've been promising for a very long time, but we're just starting to get the hardware to run it and the application layer lined up. And that's the thing that I think probably in December, when we have like the 3rd generation of the Amazon Echo, and we've got the 1st generation of the Apple HomePod, then I think the game is really afoot. And the Google Home, another product that came out, we gave it a really bad review because it was 1st generation and didn't have any software support. We tested it again about 4 weeks ago, and we had a huge argument on staff about whether or not it had caught up to the Echo. And we were split really, really tight. It's a really, really strong platform. And again, the thing that makes these products better is that they are always learning. Siri had a relatively slow learning curve because not that many people were using it. Everyone's using the Alexa. And all of these companies are using AI and machine learning to refine their products, refine their services, and improve the quality of the outputs. And it shows off. And that's why these things are working. So that segment is the one that I'm most excited about.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do we have time for audience questions?
Yeah, great. Who would like to kick us off? I'm going to do like 2 quick questions here, knowing that we still have some networking time before we lose our space here, and Dan's not allowed to go anywhere. And of course, you can ask Adam questions too. So who would like to ask a question? I would like to validate Dan's claim on the Alexa versus Google Home. I literally texted him a couple months ago about 9:30 at night. I'm like, we're having the discussion. We're ready to pull the trigger. Which one do I get? The text back was, hands down, Alexa. Don't ask me any more questions. I know, but now it's like, oh, now I have to go home and have this conversation all over. Yes, sir, you have a question? Let me get you on this.
I was Team Alexa in that argument, although it's because that's what I have in my house. I use it more.
So talking about the Amazon Alexa, the challenge that I see is that there are so many skills available, but it's so hard to communicate to such a broad audience what it can actually do. And so it's probably being used to a very small, portion of its capacity. How do you change that? I mean, I know Amazon sends out an email once a week. Here are some new skills. That, I delete so many emails that I don't have time to read. How do we deal with the fact that there's just so much happening and society just doesn't have the capacity to even deal with it?
Yeah. Skill discovery is a uniquely challenging problem for voice platforms, especially the way Amazon's deployed its skills, where you have to turn them on, which makes sense because otherwise you wouldn't know what it was doing when you gave it commands. But you almost have to know what it can do before you can ask it to do something. And that's a serious gating factor. We've been trying to figure out how to do this with skills, and short of a directory model, because it's not visual, there's no screen, and you're not going to want to have to look this stuff up on your desktop or on your phone in order to figure out what it can do. It's a unique challenge. It's very similar to the challenge we had in the mobile era, where we had an app store, and that was great, and there were the top 10 apps in the app store, but fundamentally there was so many more apps than you could possibly discover. The app store became the kingmaker. And only the things that got highlighted in the App Store in the top 10 lists had any presence whatsoever in the market. Amazon's having the same problem. We're going to get to a point where the conversational interface will be such that you're just going to ask it questions about what it can do. And you're going to learn from friends about what it can do. And that you may get a briefing about what I can do. And maybe a spoken briefing as opposed to something you have to look up. But again, it's like so early in this technology that designers really haven't had time to think about it and mull on it because this hasn't been an interface that's existed for more than 3 years.
Alexa's just started broadcasting once in a while about this new phone communications. Now you ask it.
Yeah, but at the same time, we don't want to get ads on our Alexa, and it's the same model where we're trying to. The first generation, when we were developing, we are developing an Alexa app, and the first thing that happened was the salespeople were like, "Oh, that's great! We'll be able to have 15-second audio ads that we'll incorporate into the buying recommendations." And I was like, "That is a terrible idea." for a whole bunch of reasons. Like that is the worst idea, but it's because they're trying to deliver a product for the last medium on the new medium. And the bottom line is it's going to be really, really hard work to develop monetization strategies, but also even just content distribution strategies for this medium that like we haven't lived with long enough to really understand.
Okay. Oh, question? Yep. Hold on 1 second. I'm coming.
Hi, just a quick question. Do you know if they work with auditory experts or people who navigate the world using sound, thinking possibly blind people?
For the home assistants in particular?
Yeah, just understanding how to access that.
I mean, I think that they use, I haven't heard of them doing research in that space in particular. I think mostly they're going for a mainstream audience, but we've just talked about a ton, we just did a cover story on assistive technology and augmented perception, augmented senses. And if you look at the technology research in all the major companies, they're looking for ways to enhance sight, to enhance sound, and to remap the senses across one another in some really, really interesting ways. So I think that the home assistance market, Google Home, is not an assistive technology in and of itself, and it's not really being built for that. But I think that it's an interesting category because if you want to look at how to develop an interface that doesn't require any visual senses, that would be a rich audience to mine.